Well, our beloveds, welcome to the next month in your journey of discovery and exploration. So our question to you today is, what makes you go boom? What makes you explode? What makes you angry? What makes you see red, white, and blue? What makes you, here's a word which doesn't exist, what makes you deciphorous? Deciphorous. You decipher that which you want and what you don't. And what you don't, you punch in the effing face to make it go away. What is that? As you begin to speak up, and to find your own voice in this world, to say what you prefer and what you don't and why, it's really difficult for many of you. And you will choose to not do it quite as well as you potentially could, but you are finally learning to speak up in a different way. We have spent much time with our another in the last number of months working on a new path forward for her, because these new energies are so difficult to manage. You're being asked literally to rewire your entire DNA or genetic imprint, why things work the way they do, and when and how. And if you have been masters at manifesting in the old energy, but it was with a push instead of being pulled forward, well, you're finding that much of that is so difficult these days, because what you're attempting to push forward, it just is not moving, which creates even more resistance and frustration, and decidedly nothing is working in your favor attitude. And while we cannot disagree with your overall assessment with how you perceive certain aspects of your lives, it's not that it doesn't work, it doesn't work in that old manner. If, for example, you became drug resistant to a particular formulary, would you say that your entire body is broken? Or would you simply say, well, I need to try a new way, find a different medicine or approach, because the old one it has pooped out, as has been used in the antidepressant arena. But it also works for antibiotics. It works for anti-inflammation. It works for many different pharmaceutically based medicines, because your body at some point becomes immune to the effectiveness of that particular formulary, and it simply no longer works. There are many reasons, and it is not consistent across the board, but just know that for many of you, it is time to try a different formulary. And this one, believe it or not, ding, 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 is based on love. Every time you hear a bell ring, an angel gets its wings. Well, expect to have a lot of ding, ding, ding moments this month, the next, and the following, because many of you will be awakening to a whole new way of experiencing life through trial and error. You will be asked to try new things, to let go of old things, to begin to understand why these new processes work better than the old, and it is because you're being pulled forward instead of trying to push a heavy rock uphill. And then you will just simply, at some point, surrender to this new energy because it will feel like home. It will feel familiar, but for many of you, it may take months or years or even decades, because if you are not interested in aligning with this new vibration, well, then you will resist and make excuses for why the old way no longer works, but you will not be willing to change your ways. And that is okay. We have factored in quite a number of you not behaving as the rest of the world would prefer, but continuing down your path of obstinance, because that is still where you are at in your learning curve. And we honor that path, we really do, because it simply means you have not learned fully what you came here to learn, and you are not ready to let go of those old belief systems, because you still have some more turns at the trigger, if you will, that you wish to experience. But just know that you too, in this lifetime or the next one, will do it differently. The energies that you are born into these days vastly differ from when many of you were born a long time ago. And so just know that if you can't master it this time, you will master it the next time. But many individuals who are still waiting for you to grow up will have to wait for the energetic apologies, because the actual ones will not manifest in this lifetime. It is a consternation for many in this world who simply would love to move on into a different energetic imprint, because they know that that lesson between you and them is far behind them. But for those individuals who would like an apology, which, if we're honest, is pretty much all of them, well, if you can't offer it, then they will still be stuck to a certain extent in their own lesson of forgiveness as well, because it is hard to forgive someone who has not risen to the challenge to take responsibility for their past behavior. And for those who do desire to move through that plane of forgiveness, it will have to be a plane of forgiveness for self and for the universe and for the process, instead of the actual forgiveness that they would love to offer to that other individual. Now, many of you do not understand what level of release a forgiveness offers the human body, whether it is for self or someone else, until you can get to that place of forgiving yourself for what it is that you have caused or done upon others. It is just a difficult journey for you, because you carry a vibration which harms yourself, but it also still does ripple out to a certain extent to the other person, because there are still energetic connections in many ways that define the relationship. And when humanity finally realizes that forgiveness, magnanimous, as we said, the word for this year, if you recall, magnanimous is where you can forgive the universe for what has occurred. But we are not there yet, and half of the year has passed. We have made many strides to provide an imprint which would allow many to get to that place of forgiveness for self as well as for others, but it still requires a greater energetic shift within many of you. And so here we are today, just saying, keep on keeping on. You're going to feel how the next 3 months will create a different imprint, how you've matured through many of the new energetic imprints, and how you are now moving into the next one, because the imprint from next year has already begun its vibrational impact into this planet, meaning that it will be more present by the fiscal year end for many of you, and then fully merged, if you will, by June of next year. Energy is fluid. It doesn't just drop on you like a big boulder. It ushers in through a gentler approach, allowing the energetic imprint within your body to infuse itself with these vibrations, because at the end of the day, it is meant to be more of a gentle invitation than a soccer punch. But we wish you all a happy July, a happy 4th of July for those of you who choose to celebrate that. Though we must say, for many Americans, there is a much less to celebrate this year, as they finally begin to understand how America is sliding into fascism, even though the presidential puppeteers have been swapped out. It is the imprint within the government now which allows for much of this to happen. And many of you were completely unaware, we shall say, with the importance of the Supreme Court, and only now are you beginning to understand how really important the presidential election is. But having said that, we wish to remind you all, for those who are on both sides of the political divide, it is your vibrational impact within your own field. And when we say energetic impact versus imprint, it is confusing our another right now. She always wonders if we misspeak, but we don't misspeak. A vibrational impact is what, let's just say it this way. Your vibrational imprint has a vibrational impact on the world around you. And until you come to a space where you are more generous with those who are different than you, regardless of which side of the political divide you are on, you will continue to find how these extremes will continue to play out, because you are here to learn to love those who differ from you. And it is the left that, if you will, ushered in the final imprint that is creating this reactionary response within the governmental entities. It is merely the pendulum swinging back and forth, and the left had an opportunity to be generous and kind in its COVID vaccine application, and it chose not to. The my body, my choice was completely obliterated because you thought you were right, and therefore this lesson, which could have been learned differently, is going to now present itself in a more harmful way, as many individuals, believe it or not, male and female, will die in this process because you chose not to be magnanimous with those who really, truly believed my body, my choice. You could have been consistent in your narrative, but you chose not to, showing the hypocrisy on both sides of the divide. And this is what hypocrisy does. It brings to light the pain and the suffering that is caused by the continual divide between humanity, because at the end of the day, you are all one ultimately, but you still don't believe it, and therefore more pain and suffering will arise because of your insistence on being right rather than being loving. It is just simply an energetic imprint which must be released before the collective can move on to the next lesson. And it will come, it will arise, it always does, but not without some fanfare, but just not the kind that you desire. So we shall leave it there and allow many of you to continue on with your head stuck partially down the rabbit hole, but not fully embracing what this new energetic imprint really does have to offer, which is magnanimous magnanimity. And so it is. Namaste.